Well, good afternoon and welcome to Retirement Essentials for today's webinar on the latest age pension changes, which kick in tomorrow. We're going to talk you through what's changed, what matters, and what it means for you. My name is David Kennedy. I'm the Head of Advice at Retirement Essentials, and shortly I'll be joined by our retirement experts, Nicole Bell, Senior Financial Advisor, and Stephen Sadler, Centrelink Guru and Head of Customer Service at Retirement Essentials. We are delighted to have you along for our latest webinar where we aim to help you understand what's new in the world of Centrelink and super. And as always, we'll explain those changes in a way that's really easy to understand. So welcome everyone. Today you're going to hear about the latest age pension changes. They do start tomorrow, so the session's really timely. We're going to hear from Nicole and Stephen on who will be affected by changing deeming rates, and Nicole's also going to talk us through some end of financial year planning. As we know, superannuation limits and rules will be changing from the 1st of July. You'll also have an opportunity to participate in some live Q&A. Now, before we get underway, a couple of housekeeping issues. A general advice warning: the information we do provide today is general in nature. It's not intended as personal or product advice. It doesn't take into account your personal situation, your needs or goals, and we do recommend you seek advice and read the relevant product disclosure statement before making any changes to your circumstances. We're also going to be making available a Q&A feature, which is really quite exciting. So to access the Q&A feature, you need to look at the top of your Microsoft Teams control panel. You'll see a Q&A icon with the Q&A feature on it. You need to click that to post a question. And to do that, you need to have logged in via the Teams browser option. So coming into the webinar via your browser, and you'll then have the option to post a Q&A via the panel. So please keep questions relevant and concise. Be sure to upvote questions. So if you see another question that's similar to yours, you can press the upvote button, and this avoids duplication, but also helps us understand which questions are the most popular. I should point out there are a lot of attendees on the call, so we may not have time to get to all questions, but we will do our best. And in the event we don't get to your question, do keep an eye on our weekly e-newsletter and our website, where you can find hundreds of articles on retirement planning topics and the age pension. I'd also encourage you to check out the free tools and resources on the Retirement Essentials website. You can do things like estimate your age pension eligibility, forecast how much you can safely spend over the course of retirement, and you can estimate what the latest age pension changes mean for you. I'll now hand over to Stephen and Nicole, who are going to take us through today's presentation.
Thank you for the introduction, David. Yes, my name is Stephen Sadler. I like to consider myself a Centrelink guru, so thanks for that, David. And I'll be taking you guys through the changes to the age pension, the rates and the thresholds, and what's coming up tomorrow. And I'll share a few tips and tricks and some myth busting along the way before I'll then hand over to Nicole, who'll take you through the second half of the presentation. So first things first, the biggest question on everybody's mind is going to be, what is the age pension change? How much more will we potentially be getting? So on the screen in front of you, you'll see the maximum rate of age pension. It is going up by just over $20 a fortnight for singles and just over $30 a fortnight combined for couples. So those new figures there. Now, a couple of things to understand with regards to how singles and couples are assessed, which can sometimes be misunderstood. So in Centrelink's eyes, the difference between a single versus a couple is literally, do you have a romantic partner or not? It doesn't matter if you do have a partner, it doesn't matter which one of you is applying, whether it's only one of you or both of you. That's not what determines a single pension or a single applicant versus a couple's applicant. It is just, do you have a partner? So if you have a partner, then it is the couple's rate of pension that is applicable to you. And also on the next few slides, we're going to talk about the thresholds. They do differ between singles and couples as well. So you just want to make sure you're looking at everything related to couples versus singles are people who do not have any kind of romantic relationship at the moment. And so therefore, single rates is what would be applicable to you. The other thing that is important to understand with regards to couples is that if you do have a partner and they are not eligible for the age pension, like they're, say, only 60 years old and not yet old enough for it, then the maximum amount of pension you yourself can receive is 50% of that figure you're seeing in front of you, so roughly $900. The reason for that is because Centrelink does the couple's pension as a combined total for the two of you, and then they split it in half 50-50. So you both get half each. There'll never be a scenario where, the husband gets, say, $1,000 a fortnight and the wife only gets $800 a fortnight. It doesn't matter whose name, income, and assets are in. You're assessed as a combined total. So as a couple, you'd be eligible for $1,800 a fortnight, and then you would both get a $905 split each. And if it happens to be a lower amount that you're eligible, either way, it's still an even 50-50 split every time. And so, yes, if you do have a partner who's not yet eligible for the pension, then your share would be 50% of that maximum total, not the full $1,800. And unfortunately, it's definitely not $1,800 per person if you are a couple. So do please bear that in mind, when looking at your situation. So on this slide, we're going to talk about the age pension threshold for assets. Okay, so the way to read this is single people, you want to look at the top row, couples, you want to look at the bottom. On the left-hand side, highlighted in blue, is what we call the minimum threshold. What that means is that if your assets are less than those figures, then you would be eligible for the full age pension. And on the right-hand side is what we call the maximum threshold, which is where if your assets exceed that limit, then you would not be eligible for any age pension. In terms of if you're halfway in between the two, what is the impact? As you see down the bottom there, it says your age pension reduces by $3 for every $1,000 your assets exceed that minimum threshold. Now, first things first, in terms of changes, the minimum thresholds are remaining as is. They're not changing, but the maximum thresholds are increasing, which is good. It means you can have more assets before you are considered ineligible for the pension, and it also means you'll potentially get a bit more pension if you were right really close to that threshold. So if there's anybody here today who's been really close to the threshold and you're waiting for it to increase, now may be the time. You may now be eligible, or with some upcoming changes you might have in the near future, you might become eligible as well. You'll see here, aside from just being single or couple, the other differentiating factor is whether you're a homeowner or not. So with regards to home ownership, how Centrelink define that is, do you own what they call your primary place of residence, where you sleep at night, basically? So it could be, say, an RV or a caravan. It could be a houseboat. It isn't necessarily a home, but the place where you live, do you own it, yes or no? If the answer is yes, then you would be considered a homeowner. If the answer is no, then you would be considered a non-homeowner. So the most obvious example would be people who rent. But there's many people who say live with family. Their family are the ones who own the home. They just live there. They don't necessarily pay rent. You'd still be considered a non-homeowner in that scenario. So do bear that in mind when looking at these thresholds. Now, if you are a homeowner, one bit of good news, the home that you live in, that primary place of residence, is not counted as an asset. It is exempt. Otherwise, it'd be very unfair and very few people would actually be eligible for the pension if you had to factor in that primary place of residence as well. So do bear that in mind. Your house that you live in is exempt from assessment, whether it's worth $100,000 or $100 million, whether you have a mortgage against it or not, that doesn't come into play. Centrelink don't factor that in, so you don't need to worry about that. If you do own any other residences, though, any other property, like perhaps a holiday home or an empty block of land you plan to build on, or an actual investment property that you're renting out, any secondary property that you own will be assessable as an asset. So do bear that in mind.
I think it's really interesting because I had a client the other day who doesn't live in their home anymore, but it is their primary home. And if they were to sell it, they moved out about 5 years ago. If they were to sell it from a tax perspective, they wouldn't pay capital gain because the tax office doesn't think it's it gets exempt. And it's interesting to see that the age pension rules and the tax rules don't always align. They actually frequently don't align. So just because you don't live there, but you think it's your home, but your primary residence, just because you don't necessarily an investment property because you're not renting it out, doesn't mean that you get to continue to exempt it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great call out, Nicole. Yeah, the key thing to understand is the ATO are governed by tax law, Centrelink are governed by social security law. And there are some similarities, but as Nicole said, there's definitely some big differences as well. And so they don't always align, and you could end up a bit worse off if you mistakenly go down that path. So do make sure you understand where you stand with Centrelink and the age pension and what your options are available to you. Aside from your home, the next most common asset is generally going to be your superannuation, which is an assessable asset. One thing though with superannuation, for if you are a couple and your partner is under age pension age, and their superannuation is still in accumulation mode, then that superannuation is exempt. Okay, that superannuation and the home you live in are the only two types of assets that can be exempt. Everything else is on the cards. But yes, I'll just repeat that. If your partner is under age pension age and their super is in accumulation, both conditions must be met, then their super is exempt from assessment. Once they either A, take that super out of accumulation and put it into a pension account, or B, turn 67, both of those conditions are now no longer being met and the super becomes assessable. So it's a great thing to be aware of, be mindful of. My team and I speak with a lot of people who don't realize that and assume that their partner's super combined with all their other assets makes them ineligible for the pension, and they don't even bother trying to apply when they actually could be eligible for some pension, while their partner is under age pension age.
What we actually see a lot as well is people that are retired but not yet at age pension age, and their superannuation have set them up with their account-based pensions, and so they're tracking along as they go. When the elder partner gets to age pension age and applies for the age pension, and actually is not realizing that their age pension is being reduced because of the fact that their younger partner already has an account-based pension or a pension account set up with their super. So there may be worth reviewing, making some changes to the super there that can create opportunities to look at maybe accessing a bit extra.
Yep, absolutely. And really highlights the importance of understanding where you stand as early as possible. You may be thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to be eligible for the age pension for years to come. I'll worry about that then. But no, you really should engage as soon as possible, because there are things you can consider, potential changes you can make to get yourself set up in the best possible position to make that application as good and easy as possible, but also get the maximum amount that you are entitled to. Centrelink don't proactively try and they won't knock on your door and let you know that, hey, we think you might have made a mistake here, or you could do things differently and maybe get a bit more pension. They will just take what you tell them as is and assess it accordingly. So do be mindful about that. It's never too late or too early. You always want to make sure you double check your understanding and where you stand with Centrelink.
Yeah, they definitely don't tell you. I know we've seen it before. You've seen it, Steve, where people have got age pension already and they've asked them, what are your contents worth? And their contents, they've put, oh, I've insured my contents for $80,000. And they haven't realised that Centrelink's gone, okay, if you say so, not realising it's supposed to be that kind of garage sale value. And they've really overvalued that asset. So it's also good to be mindful of that as well, because you can lock those in at a really high rate that ends up basically penalising you a little bit.
Absolutely. Okay, so on the next slide, we'll talk about the income thresholds. So similar format to before, singles left to right on the top row, couples left to right on the bottom row. And again, on the left-hand side, highlighted in blue, are what we call the minimum thresholds. So your income will need to be under that to be eligible for the full age pension. And on the right-hand side are the maximum thresholds of what you can earn before you'd be considered ineligible for the pension. And if you are over that minimum threshold, then your pension reduces by 50 cents for every $1 that you exceed that threshold by. Now, when we talk about income, the most obvious and common type of income is employment income. But the reason why I like to call that out is because we often hear from a lot of people the belief that they actually can't earn any income at all. You have to be fully retired before you can get onto the age pension. And that's simply not true. You can work, you can earn income. It just needs to be under the threshold, that maximum threshold on the right, in order to be able to get some kind of age pension. And this threshold is going up as well. That's one of the changes that's coming through. So it used to be just over 100,000. It's gone up by a couple of thousand now for couples to 104, and it's gone up to 68 for singles as well. So the minimum thresholds, they're staying the same. They're not moving up or down, but the maximum thresholds are increasing. And so again, that's a good thing. Means you can earn more income without necessarily losing the pension, or perhaps get onto the pension now if your income was just over that threshold previously. As I said, employment income is the most common type of income, and there's a great thing that can help you reduce how much of your income is accessible called the work bonus. So with the work bonus, Centrelink gives you effectively a $300 discount off of your earnings, and they'll only assess the remaining difference. So let's pretend you're a single person earning $1,000 a fortnight. Based on this here, that's over the $218 minimum. So therefore, the roughly $750 that you're over the minimum threshold by would be assessable as income. However, Centrelink applies that $300 work bonus. Says, okay, well, we're going to pretend you didn't earn $750. We're going to pretend you only earned $450, and that's what they'll actually assess as the income earned. In which case, that's going to mean a lot more pension for you. And the great thing about the work bonus is this all happens automatically. You don't have to track it yourself. You don't have to apply it. You don't have to tell Centrelink to do it. They automatically track your income earnings against the work bonus to make sure that they're assessing it correctly for you. If you're not working right now, or you perhaps go on a small break from work, that work bonus accumulates for you, sorry. That will keep building up for you, up to a maximum of just under $12,000 in total. And where that can be really helpful is, we work with a lot of, say, nurses or teachers, things like that, where they've retired. They're not working full time anymore, but once or twice a year they might, go back to work and help out in a tough spot. We get a lot of teachers who go back to around HSC exam marking time. They'll go back and do a bit of work and earn a bit of income. And the great thing there is, so you might get a couple of $1,000s for a couple of months' work, but because you've got that work bonus built up in your little kitty on the side, that income you've earned may be of no impact to your age pension payments whatsoever, because it's entirely offset by the work bonus you've saved up. So the work bonus, very good. And the great thing is just that it all happens automatically for you. You don't have to actively manage it or do anything with Centrelink. They'll do it for you. The two things, sorry, Nicole, yes?
I was just going to say, I have a client, and every year at Christmas, he goes and works at Dan Murphy's, and he earns about $10,000, and it has zero impact on his age pension, because throughout the year he accumulates that work bonus, and it offsets pretty much the whole thing. If he goes a little bit over, there's a tiny reduction, and that's it. So if you have that opportunity to earn that lumpy income, that work bonus really pays off.
Absolutely. So just two things I'll clarify on the work bonus. So firstly, if you are a couple, you each have your own independent work bonus balances. So if you're both on the pension and both working, that's great. It means you both get a $300 a fortnight discount each, as opposed to one you have to share between the two. However, again, if your partner is not on the age pension, say they're not eligible yet, then their work bonus is separate from yours. You can't claim their $300 to discount your income even further. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And the second thing is the work bonus only applies if you are on the pension, which means your income needs to be under these maximum thresholds in the first place to even start considering the age pension. Another common thing we help people understand is they think, oh, great, $68,000 a year and I'm earning $73,000. By the time I take the work bonus off that, I'll be under the threshold and eligible. And no, it does not work that way, unfortunately. You need to be under the threshold first to get approved. And then once you're on the pension, that's when the work bonus starts to kick in. So you can't use that to get under the threshold. The next big thing when it comes to understanding the income assessment is deemed income. Okay, so deemed income in a nutshell is Centrelink's way of determining the income that your financial assets generate. Okay, so when we talked about assets, we talked about how superannuation is one of your biggest ones, and absolutely is. That's the biggest financial asset you'll likely have, but then there's also things like money in the bank. You might have shares that you own outside of super. Cryptocurrency is on the rise. We're starting to see more and more people with cryptocurrency. Any of those kind of financial assets that earn some kind of a return for you have this deeming rate applied to them. Things that aren't financial assets do not. So just to clarify, like cars, for example, they don't earn you any money for owning a car. They just cost you money. Your personal contents, they don't have deeming applied. So it is only applied to financial assets, not non-financial ones, because as I said, it's the point of it is to determine how much income or how much of a return that asset is generating for you as part of the income assessment. And so on the screen in front of you, you'll see the rates that Centrelink use to assess the deemed income from it. And if you think about it, it would be a logistical nightmare for all pensioners. Imagine if you had to declare to Centrelink every interest payment on every bank account you've got, every return on your super, every dividend on shares. You'd be forever going backwards and forwards, updating facts and figures for them. And it'd be a nightmare for them as well to try and do all those calculations. So that's where this deeming can come in and make things a lot simpler. They presume that this is the rate of return that you're earning. So if you're earning more than this, from what we saw in our research, many super funds were earning more than the 3.25% that is the deeming rate. So you're still coming out better off, and there's no penalty for that. Centrelink are happy to wear that people might be getting better returns than what their deeming rate is presuming, because it makes everything a lot simpler and easier across the board for both sides of the equation. So don't panic if you see this rate and think, oh, okay, I'm getting more than that. Do I need to declare that, or am I going to get into trouble? No, not at all. Conversely, if you've currently got your money in a bank account where it doesn't earn this kind of interest, then yes, you are going to be slightly penalized. Centrelink are going to presume it is earning that. So again, you may want to have a look at your situation, maybe book a session with an advisor to go through and see if there's changes you could make to get more out of your money. So with the deeming rates, I'm going to pass over to Nicole now. She's going to go through a couple of examples because this is a really common topic that they talk to customers about in their sessions, and she'll go through with you guys a few different scenarios and how the impacts of these changes to deeming might affect yourselves. Go ahead, Nicole.
Okay. All right. So for anyone hoping that I would sit down and go through step by step every individual calculation and we were going to nerd out together, unfortunately, we're not doing it like that today, but I have a bunch of examples just to kind of highlight what kind of impact this is going to have. So I want to be really clear. This has been a very significant change. We had very low deeming rates for a very long time. What that meant was we could usually look at someone's situation. If they didn't have employment income, for example, or other sources of income, we could look at their situation and basically assess based on their asset levels whether they're getting a full pension or not. Now, because of these increases in deeming rates, that's no longer the case. We now have situations where someone is under the asset threshold, but they're actually on a part pension because their assets are deemed to earn enough that they're exceeding the income test threshold. So what we're actually seeing is some people might have been on a full pension already. They might, for example, if you're a single homeowner and you have 250,000 in super and a car and contents, you're under the threshold for the asset test perspective, you've been getting a full age pension entitlement. With this deeming change, there may be some impact. You may officially be a part pensioner because we're starting to see a reduction under that income test. So for some people, it is actually going to be quite a change, especially when they've been sitting around just every March, every September, getting a bit of a bump, $20 a fortnight or so in their age pensions. This kind of changes the equation for quite a few people. So we just wanted to have a little bit more of a look at that. So here we have a single homeowner. So I can look at this situation and go, look, superannuation is 175,000, financial assets 35. We're under the asset threshold. So the asset threshold is 321,500 for this person, but we have some employment income coming through. So the employment income's above the lower income threshold. We're already income tested. So what that means is that the amount of income they're assuming that they're making off their superannuation and financial assets is actually just suddenly on the 20th of March going to bump up because of the increase in that deeming rates. At the same time, what we're going to see is just that normal indexation increase that is, and in this particular situation, it's actually offsetting it a little bit. So if everything was the same, we didn't have a change in deeming rates, this person would see an increase in their age pension of $22 a fortnight because of that normal indexation. But we're actually getting a little bit, I wouldn't say penalty, but a bit of a decrease in the assessment because of the increase in deeming rates and how much they think they're earning. So overall, we're still seeing an improvement in age pension of about $2 a fortnight, but because of that increase, we're not getting the full benefit of that indexation in this particular situation. So this is where it can really come in, shifting people from looking at assets and how it's impacting you to actually income, and maybe it's impacting you there. In this particular situation, this is a non-homeowner couple. They have those higher asset thresholds. They have financial assets of 550 between them with super and cash, things like that. And so they probably already were income tested. So previously they were receiving $1,717 a fortnight. The maximum's previously $1,777. So a bit of a discount, but not too much below the maximum pension previously. We're now seeing they're going to lose about $19 a fortnight of age pension. And that is because they're income tested, the rate of return that we're assuming we're making off the super and the savings, etc., has gone up, and that's impacted their pension. So even though their indexation should have improved their age pension by about $33 a fortnight between the two of them, because they're both over age pension age, we're actually seeing a decrease of $19 per fortnight because the impact of that deeming really takes away from the indexation, and then there's that little bit more of an impact because of that deeming calculation. One more, just because I like numbers, have a look at another one. Single homeowner. So someone owns their own home. Once again, this person has lower asset thresholds. Assets are below the asset threshold cutoff point, but we do have someone who's earning employment income. They're on a part pension because of their employment income. So any interest deeming calculations on their super and their savings is going to increase and is going to have a higher amount assessed as income. Timing wise, we're getting that $22 a fortnight indexation, we're getting the impact of deeming. We're going backwards by about $4 a fortnight. Look, it seems minor, but when you're on an age pension, sometimes that $22 a fortnight you've been used to getting every 6 months or so does make that little bit of a difference. So I think a few people are going to end up a little bit shocked or surprised when all of these changes come through. So it's just something to keep in mind. Anyone who's like, I don't identify myself there, where is this situation where we're all retired, couple who owns their own home, something like that, this calculator is actually available on our website. I think we're going to send a link to it in our post webinar email so that you can pop your details in there. Look, the changes are coming through on the 20th, but obviously you're not going to see the impact of that change until your first full payment post the 20th of March. So if you want a bit of a heads up and you want to understand how it might apply in your situation, never fear, we have one ready to go. You just need to pop in and put your own sort of details in the calculator or give you a bit of an indication. Another thing that happens at exactly the same time is Centrelink's revaluing your super. So if there are changes to your bank account balances, etc., you need to let Centrelink know. But generally, every March and September, your superannuation fund will do a big data dump to Centrelink and just let them know of what your super balance is now looking like. And when that happens, then Centrelink will revalue those assets as well, and the balances change a little bit. So it's not always easy to know exactly where these adjustments come from in March and September. And in this particular circumstance, we have 3 different things happening. We have increased deeming rates, we have updated balances on your super, and we have the indexation of the payment. So it may just be you wait around until the first payment to figure out, surprise, this is how much more or less I'm getting. Or you can pop in, look at the calculator, put your updated super balance details in. It does highlight here the change in terms of up and down per fortnight, but the estimated entitlement will be based on the figures that you just pop into the calculator. So it's definitely worth having a little bit of a look. And I want to actually come back to what Stephen was saying. Interest rates are going up, which is excellent in some ways, except for the impact that it's had on our deeming rates. Interest rates are going up. If you have cash in the bank and it's stagnating and you're not really shopping around, you're letting it do its thing, we have an opportunity where if you shop around a little bit, you get a high rate return on that cash. It might be able to compensate for some of the impact of this. So just keep that in mind. If you've got 30,000 in a cash account earning 2%, you switch it over to 3.5% interest rate, which you can probably even get better than that. I've seen better than that. That extra 1.5% is going to get you $450 a year, which is maybe going to make up for more than make up for the $98 a year that you maybe have just gone backwards in terms of your age pension. I know it's not the same. It's not the government giving you the money. It is, just earning interest on the bank account. But opportunities are really arising. There are a lot of really great opportunities to just maximize the cash you have in the bank. And you might think it might not be worth shopping around. Some people think $30,000, $40,000 is not that much money, but it makes a difference. So definitely worth going hunting and seeing what you can do. And so I think that was it in terms of our age pension changes, deeming, etc. If you didn't recognize yourself in those examples, as I said, we're going to make that calculator available so that you can explore that on your own post-appointment. Hopefully, you're not seeing too negative an impact in your own situation. Just going to move on to super changes. So there was no big dramatic changes to the superannuation system or structure in any way, but a lot of them, it's really just a shifting of some thresholds, creating some opportunities to move a little bit of funding around if that's the kind of situation that you're looking at the moment. First and foremost, this is great potentially for some people that are still working or selling an investment property or for any other reason want to get a bit of a tax break on the funds that they're getting into superannuation. So the limit, the before tax contribution limit. So this includes things like your employer contributions, your salary sacrifice contributions, and also whether you're eligible to make an after-tax contribution to super and then claim a tax deduction for it. So all of those altogether in a financial year are allowed to add up to $32,500 from next financial year onwards. So currently that limit sits at $30,000. which was nice and round, but we do like to see an increase. It gives us a little bit more of opportunities for a tax break in some circumstances. So keep that in mind. You might be able to be in a position to bump up your salary sacrifice a little bit, or basically just money in your own pocket is better than money in the ATO. So worth looking into, particularly if you're within the last couple of years of working. So if you've only got another year or two, especially of earning high levels of income and actually paying tax, it may be worth making sure you're maximizing these benefits, because once you're retired, if most of your money is in super and you're on an age pension, a lot of people never pay tax again. And everyone is saying, hallelujah, that sounds fabulous. It is fabulous, but we want to try and save as much tax as possible while we're still actually paying it. So it's definitely something worth exploring in the last couple of years to make sure that you're getting as much tax back as you possibly can. And there are strategies we can potentially look at to maximize that. Then the next thing is a change to the after-tax contribution cap. So this is when you've just got money sitting in the bank and you want to chuck it into super just so it's in super. So this usually includes much higher levels of savings that you're looking to shift into super. It could be the consequence of the sale of an asset, or just, getting to superannuation. You've accumulated a lot of savings. You can access your super now. You're more comfortable moving money in there, whatever it looks like. So currently we can get in a financial year up to 120,000 in. So that's actually increasing to 130,000 next year. But what I find really interesting is the bring forward arrangement. So what this means, even though this year we have this limit of 120,000, they actually let you borrow next year's limit and the year after, but it's always based on the limit in the current year. So right now I could put 360 in, because 120 this year, 120 next year, 120 next year, we can get 360,000 in. But because from July next year that's going up a little bit, that creates an opportunity to put a little bit more in terms of a single lump sum. I actually had a customer the other day. He's selling his home. It's worth $1 million. He's going to walk away with $1 million. He's selling his home, but he's actually going to live with his brother. They get along. They don't just want to rattle around together in his brother's house. And so he's just going to sell his home and he wants to put the money into super. And generally, we wouldn't have the opportunity to put $1 million into superannuation because our limits are, well below that point. But luckily for him, he actually has lived in his home for more than 10 years. And he's under 75. So what we're looking to do is he's, I think, selling in April, the money's coming through. We're going to put 120,000 in the current financial year. Then we're going to hold off. That's it. That's all we're going to do. And then after July, we're going to use this bring forward rule with that higher limit. So we're doing 130 times 3 after the 1st of July. So there's 510 of that million we're able to get in. On top of that downsizer contribution, which isn't on the slide, but I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it, because he's owned his home for 10 years, we're able to get 300,000 from the proceeds of the sale of the property into superannuation. So now we've got most of that money, $810,000, we're going to be able to get into super for him. Not much left outside. He's not going to get a pension. He doesn't care. Living with his brother, nothing costs much. His brother's getting all the discounts on his own, council rates and things. And also, as a non-homeowner, his asset threshold's actually higher. So he doesn't have anything but his home. So it may not be too long before he gets below that 980,000 and gets his pension and concession card back. But that's beside the point. Obviously, it just demonstrates the opportunity when these thresholds go up to just get that little bit extra that we can park in that tax-free environment of super in retirement. So you won't ever need to worry about doing a tax return again. So happy days. No more ATO. This is a little bit of a controversial introduction. A lot of people had a lot of opinions about this, but Division 296 tax, this is just taxing superannuation returns for people who have more than $1 million in super. This is a very small percentage of the population. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. A little bit of extra tax if you've got a lot of money. That's ultimately what it looks like. We'll wait and see once it's implemented, but you'll probably have a bit of an idea for yourself whether or not it's likely to impact you. Remember that super is, concessionally taxed anyway. There's only a certain amount we can move into that tax-free space, which is limited at 2 million, which we'll talk about in a second. If you're in this situation, you probably talk to, your accountant or your super fund about how that might impact you. but very few people are likely to be impacted by this one. Payday super. So I'm not sure, up until now, a lot of employers are being quite good with it, but up until now, you actually only needed to make super contributions once a quarter for your employees. So your pay slip every fortnight might actually reflect a superannuation payment of $120. That $120 might not have gone in for 3 months, because that previously was the case. And people just forgot to check their super. There weren't that many contributions going in, but they really weren't looking at it. And this will keep, I think, employers accountable. And obviously there's a little bit of a positive compounding impact over the course of an entire lifetime of super contributions. So I think it's a really positive change. Gets paid the same time as wages. Employers aren't able to hold on to all of these funds for 3 months at a time, pocket the interest before they tip them into the employer accounts. I think this is just making everyone more accountable. In terms of a 40-year working life, and what's the difference compounding wise? You're getting it fortnightly instead of quarterly. Look, a few $1,000s maybe. It's not going to change your life, but I still think it's better in your pocket than somebody else's. So positive change, I think. Transfer balance cap. Once again, this one's really only relevant for people with really significant super balances of 2 million or more. This is just really dictates how much of your super you are able to shift into that tax-free space of a pension phase, a pension account, income stream, whatever your superannuation fund calls it. Previously sitting at 2 million, now it's sitting at 2.1. Just want to note though, if you have previously rolled $2 million to pension phase of super, you cannot then roll another 100,000 over. You've already maxed out your cap, whatever that cap was at the time. So if you did it 3 years ago when the cap was 1.7, then you have moved over 1.7 at that time. You can't now move over 400,000. You've already maxed out your cap. So these are the changes, mostly to thresholds, etc. But I still think it's really relevant because everyone's situation, everyone's strategy might look a little bit different. So hopefully that has been helpful for some people.
Okay, thanks, Nicole and Stephen. Terrific explanations and really useful lead into our Q&A. Really liked the plain English explanations of some of the changes, and we're going to keep the conversation going. We're going to share some audience questions. So thanks to those who have provided those in the Q&A panel as we've been going. And Stephen, we might come back to you with the first one. Which is from Sharon. She says, how is the asset test applied? If I'm part of a couple, it's a second marriage, we have a property each in our own name. How will Centrelink view this couple's assets?
Yep, certainly. So in that scenario, effectively Centrelink will say, okay, so which property is the primary place of residence? Because that is exempt, as I said earlier, and whichever property is not the primary place of residence, will be considered an investment property or an assessable asset, whether you're actually renting it out or not, even if you both live in each other's houses separately. Centrelink's definition, and please don't shoot the messenger, I'm not saying I agree with it, but their assessment of the situation, Sharon, would be that yes, as a couple, they would expect that you would live together in one house, and if you owned a second one, you would then sell that second house and live off the money made from it or rent it out to earn income from it, for example. So yes, one property can be exempt, and you can choose which one. It's not like it's like the retail deal where they only give you the cheap one and you have to pay for the more expensive one. So the two of you could say, okay, my property is only worth 500,000, yours is worth 1 million. Let's live in your house as a primary residence, so that's the one that is exempt, and then the cheaper or less expensive, less valuable one, is the one that's an assessable asset. But yes, only one will be exempt and the other will be an assessable asset.
Terrific, thank you. Nicole, I might come across to you. I've got a question here. How will a German pension be assessed for Centrelink purposes for one of our attendees who will soon receive a German pension? How will that be treated?
Okay, yeah, so that's actually just goes towards the income test. So where those thresholds sit in terms of the income test, depending on your situation, you may now have a couple of different layers of income contributing to that. So we might have the deemed income from your super or your savings. We might have some employment income if you're still working, and then layered on top of that, we'll have that German pension coming through. So you always want to add that in when you're looking at your age pension eligibility. Another thing to note is that international pensions are also taxable. So if, depending on the value value of that, and so is the age pension in saying that. Depending on the value of your German pension plus the value of your Australian pension, you may want to look at where you sit in terms of your tax-free thresholds and that kind of thing. In retirement, those tax-free thresholds are actually quite generous, effective tax-free thresholds because of some offsets and things like that, but definitely something worth asking your accountant about.
Very good. And Stephen, I've got an attendee here just wanting to check their understanding that for the asset test, the age pension reduces by $3 for every $1,000 your assets exceed the lower threshold. They're asking, is that $3 reduction per fortnight?
Yeah, so I believe, just from memory off the top of my head from the slide, yes, it's $3 per fortnight for every $1,000 you exceed. So then you would extrapolate that out to see what the yearly reduction was. So it could end up being, a couple of hundred per year, obviously, over the course of it. But yes, $3 for every $1,000 you exceed the minimum threshold per fortnight.
I like to think of it in bigger numbers because I find that's easier for me to compute. So if people are say, if you go on a holiday and you spend $20,000, it works out at $30 per fortnight per $10,000. So if I go on a holiday, which I spend $20,000 on, I'm going to get $60 a fortnight extra age pension. So I'm getting paid for that holiday. So I find the bigger numbers just make it sound a little bit nicer and easier for me to process.
Yeah, very good. Some good guidance there. What about, Nicole, just sticking with you, bank interest? How does Centrelink treat bank interest for the purposes of the income test is one of our questions.
I think that's where this opportunity exists when it comes to these deeming rates, what I was saying before about sort of shopping around and trying to get the best possible rate of return. So the bank, Centrelink just doesn't have the time or the capacity. I think Stephen touched on this of calculating exactly what you're earning on the bank interest, share dividends, super returns, etc. So the deeming rates are just this amount that's applied to everything. They just go, you know what, we're going to assume everything earns this much. And the upper amount of that at the moment has just increased to 3.25%. So I always like to think if you can shop around and get a rate of return higher than 3.25%, then you're pocketing the rest. Possibly there's an impact under that deeming rate for you. So maybe you're getting a little bit of that back by shopping around. But essentially, they are applying the deeming rates that we addressed earlier is how they're by looking at the balance in your bank rather than the actual interest that you're making. Hopefully that was clear. I'm not sure if Stephen feels, did I explain that well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Nailed it from my perspective. Anyway, in terms of what deeming is, bank interest is irrelevant. Centrelink will deem an income earning based on the balance of the account, regardless of what the interest rate actually is. So definitely worth shopping around to see if you can get either a better interest rate or a better investment option, if possible.
Definitely. And look, but however, this is where the rules are a little bit different again. The ATO only cares what you're actually earning. So they're going to bother going through your bank accounts and looking at your interest returns. Centrelink can't be bothered. So once again, a little bit of a difference in the rules there.
And just the second part of that question was just querying whether life insurance is counted as an asset in any scenarios.
Look, it really just depends what type of policy that you have. If you have one of those old legacy policies that has a guaranteed withdrawal value at a certain date, if you happen to live that long, something like that, then it's possible that that is classified as a financial asset. But the majority of life insurance policies we see these days, you pay a regular premium, you're only able to claim if you pass away. If that's the type of life insurance arrangement that you have, then no, there's no assessment impact from an age pension perspective. But it there are some legacy kind of policies, whole of life endowment and another kind of complex ones from back in the day that can sometimes be assessed from a Centrelink perspective. But the most common one we see, which is I'm just paying in case I die and I'll get paid out if I die, there shouldn't be any impact on your assessment.
Terrific. And just a question that's come through in the last couple of minutes, Stephen, just someone asking if I plan to reside overseas, what do I need to be thinking about from a Centrelink perspective?
Yeah, great question. So firstly, look, you can go and live overseas. You don't instantly get your pension taken off you just because you left the country. But there are definitely a few ins and outs that are worth understanding. So first and foremost, if you're going to be living there permanently, then there will be some small reductions to your pension because part of the age pension payment is what's called a pension supplement and the other one is an energy supplement. And the theory behind it is just the energy supplement is to help cover the cost of energy prices in Australia. And so therefore, if you go and live in another country where you're not paying energy prices in Australia and it's potentially much cheaper, Centrelink's position is that, well, then, we shouldn't be paying you that energy supplement anymore because you're no longer living here. So at a minimum, you will lose the energy supplement and the pension supplement, which total about $100 a fortnight from memory. I don't know the exact figure. It's about $100 a fortnight. So that's one part of your pension that will reduce. That's just the way it is. It's not something you can prove otherwise or show evidence of. That is how it works when you move overseas. The next part is there may be a further reduction. It depends, though, how long you were living in Australia as an Australian citizen before moving overseas. And that's a bit complicated because there's a few rules around those time periods and how old were you when you were living here. So it can get a bit complicated. If it is something that's it's definitely dead set what you'll be doing, I would recommend looking at booking a consultation with one of my staff. They can go through those complications with you one-on-one, and so you know exactly where you stand. If it's just something you're considering and just wondered if it's possible or not, yes, you can move overseas and still get paid an age pension. You can also get it paid into a foreign bank account. It doesn't have to stay in an Australian account. And the other thing just to be mindful of is Centrelink will, instead of paying fortnightly like they generally do, they will only pay it monthly once you're living overseas as well. So yes, it is possible, but there are a couple of things to be mindful of.
Okay, thanks again, Stephen and Nicole. We are out of time, and I'd really like to thank one and all for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure for us to have you along to the session. You'll all receive an email in the next 24 hours with a link to the webinar presentation. We'll include a link to the Age Pension Changes Estimator. And we'd also like to extend a discount offer to all attendees to save $50 on a retirement advice consultation or an age pension entitlement consultation. And you can learn more about those services on the Retirement Essentials website. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've really enjoyed bringing you the information, and we hope it's been useful for you. I'm being told there's another couple of questions coming through. We'll do our best to come back to you with information on those. I think the question I can see there is, we might just try to squeeze this one in quickly. Are bank balances automatically reviewed by Centrelink, or do I need to advise them if they've been reduced? That's a topical one, Stephen. It comes up a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably the most common misconception and myth about Centrelink, is that they have God mode access to all of your finances. And the answer is they absolutely do not. They are entirely reliant on you to tell them of changes in your bank balances. As Nicole mentioned earlier as part of her presentation, yes, superannuation companies do work with Centrelink to update your super balances with them. However, that's only superannuation companies. Banks do not have such an arrangement. Centrelink do not have access to your bank accounts to see your transactions or your balances. They do not have the ability to data match with the bank and say, is this balance correct? They have no access at all. So they are entirely reliant on you to tell them when your balances change, and they expect you to do so within 14 days of the change occurring. So yeah, if you do go on that $20,000 holiday like Nicole suggested, then kudos to you, but you should definitely get an updated bank statement and give that to Centrelink to show that $20,000 reduction and get your pension recalculated, because they will not get a tip off, and they won't proactively come to you every 6 months or so and just check, hey, these balances still correct, because for them the onus is on you. So if you don't update them, that's just a change you've missed out on. They will not back pay it to the day that you took the money out of the account. They'll say, sorry, you didn't tell us about the time, so the change takes effect from today onwards when you've notified us of the change. So yeah, definitely be on top of updating Centrelink.
Okay, thanks, Stephen, for answering that bonus question. Thank you all for your time and attendance, and we hope to see you all again soon. Bye for now.